You are born already counted. Not as a child, not as a soul, not even as a problem. You are born as a number etched into a ledger that will outlive you, aboard a vessel that has forgotten why it was built and remembers only that it must keep moving. The Imperial prison ship Lex Talionis does not orbit worlds. It does not dock unless forced. It drifts between war zones and void routes like a floating oubliette, carrying its cargo of unwanted lives from sentence to sentence. From forgetting to forgetting, I was born between bulkheads 7 and 8, in a maintenance crawl space that smelled of rust and disinfectant while the ship was translating out of the warp. My mother never saw the stars. Neither did I. The first light that touched my eyes came from lumen strips flickering behind wire mesh, jaundiced and weak, as if even the electricity resented being spent on us. Life inside an Imperial prison ship is simple in the way starvation is simple. You breathe when the air allows it. You eat when the dispensers decide you are worth feeding. You sleep when exhaustion outweighs fear. Everything else is noise layered on top of that. The chains, the screaming, the announcements that echo through the hull in high Gothic none of us understand, followed by low Gothic summaries that tell us nothing we can change. The Lex Talionis holds tens of thousands of prisoners at any given time. Her official capacity is far lower. Official numbers rarely survive contact with reality. I am prisoner 889 Theta Delta. My name was taken before I learned to speak it. Names complicate accounting. Names encourage hope. Hope causes problems. The cells are not cells the way you imagine them. There are no bars, no neat rows. We are stacked, layered, packed into coffin racks, welded into the ship's bones, 6 bodies high, sometimes 7, when transport quotas run behind schedule. You learn quickly how to breathe shallow, so your chest does not press too hard against the man above you. You learn how to sleep standing, leaning, curled around pipes that sweat recycled condensation. You learn which screams to ignore and which mean the enforcers are close. The enforcers wear black armor, polished smooth by the friction of fear. They are not arbitrators. They are not judges. They are tools designed to apply pain efficiently and without hesitation. Their boots strike the deck in perfect rhythm, a sound that carries through bulkheads and into your dreams. When they come, someone is always taken. Sometimes for interrogation, sometimes for labor details so lethal they are never spoken of again. Sometimes just to remind us that the ship still remembers how to hurt. The first time I saw an execution, I was 6 standard years old. A man 2 racks down had stopped responding during ration cycle. The dispensers flagged him as unproductive. That was enough. They unhooked him while he was still alive, dragged him into the corridor, and vented the section for 13 seconds. Not long enough to kill everyone, just long enough to teach. When the pressure returned, the body remained where it had frozen. Skin ruptured, eyes burst. No one screamed. There was no air to carry it. You grow up fast when death is used as punctuation. Food arrives as paste extruded into communal troughs bolted to the walls. The color changes based on whatever corpse starch reserves are being rotated that cycle. The taste never does. It coats your mouth, your throat, leaves a film you cannot swallow away. Hunger makes it bearable. Hunger makes everything bearable eventually. I have seen men kill for an extra mouthful. I have seen mothers starve themselves to keep their children alive one more day. And I have seen those children taken anyway when their mass falls below acceptable labor thresholds. Because that is the truth of the prison ship. Punishment is secondary. Utility is everything. We are not here to repent. We are here to be used until nothing remains. When the ship requires maintenance in irradiated sections, they come for us. When a boarding action needs bodies to clog corridors, they come for us. When a tech priest requires live subjects to test a theory he barely considers heretical, they come for us. Shackles snap closed around your wrists, around your neck, and you are marched through corridors you were never meant to see. Cathedrals of steel, plasma conduits the size of hab blocks. Windows thicker than my entire body, showing nothing but the void, endless and uncaring. The first time I worked outside my assigned block, I saw a servitor line. Men and women who had once screamed like us now moved in perfect silence. Augmetics grafted crudely into flesh, eyes replaced with lenses that stared forever at tasks they would never finish. That is when I learned that survival is not always mercy. There are no days aboard the Lex Talionis, only cycles marked by alarms and exhaustion. Time loses meaning when nothing changes. Children are born and die without ever seeing a horizon. Old men forget why they were sentenced in the first place. Some whisper prayers to the Emperor. Some curse him. Most stop thinking about him at all. Faith is heavy. It sinks when you are already drowning. I remember a malfunction once, a real one, not the routine failures we live with. A coolant breach in the lower decks. The air grew hot, wet, metallic. The lights dimmed for a brief, terrible moment. We thought the ship might actually die. People cried then, not from fear of death, but from the sudden, impossible idea of release. The breach was sealed within the hour. The enforcers executed 20 prisoners for sabotage, chosen at random. Order was restored. Hope was corrected. I have never seen the sky. I have seen men spaced. I have seen women broken into components and reassigned. I have heard the warp howl through the hull during translation, felt something vast and hateful brush against my thoughts like a fingertip testing glass. Some nights, when the Geller field fluctuates, you hear whispers that are not voices, and see shadows that do not belong to bodies. The enforcers increase patrols during those times, not to protect us, to make sure we stay where we are when the screaming starts. If you ask what life is like inside an Imperial prison ship, understand this: life is not the correct word. It implies choice, growth, a future. What we have is duration, measured suffering stretched across years until it snaps. The ship does not hate us. Hate requires attention. The ship simply continues, carrying us along like corrosion in its veins, tolerated until scraped away. I am still here. That means I am still useful. For now. I learned early that usefulness is the only prayer that ever gets answered. The Lex Talionis does not announce where it is going. It does not tell us how long we will remain aboard. Sometimes you hear rumors whispered through vents and cracks in bulkheads, fragments of overheard orders carried by crew who forget we are listening. A rebellion crushed 3 systems away. A war front bleeding bodies faster than they can be buried. A forge world requesting biological resources. Those words mean nothing until the chains come out and your number is read. When my number was first called, I was 12. That was old enough for labor, young enough that my bones still bent instead of breaking. They marched us through processing corridors scrubbed clean of blood, but never of the memory of it. Servitors stood at every junction, red lenses tracking us with perfect indifference. Somewhere deep in the ship, engines throbbed like a vast, diseased heart. I remember thinking that if the ship was alive, then we were parasites clinging to its insides, and parasites are never mourned. Labor detail Alpha Red meant hull reclamation. Void exposure rated survivable for under 6 minutes. They gave us 5. We were sealed into pressure suits so thin, they felt like lies wrapped around skin. The air tasted like old rubber and recycled fear. When the outer hatch opened, the void rushed in, silent and absolute. Stars burned without warmth. The hull stretched away beneath my boots, scarred by micrometeor impacts and weapon scoring, pitted and flaking like diseased flesh. We scraped, we patched, we died. One man's tether snapped, and he drifted away slowly, turning end over end, arms flailing as if swimming could save him. No one moved to help. We were told beforehand not to. Retrieval costs oxygen. Oxygen is logged. Logs are audited. Audits end lives. I watched until he became a dot, then nothing. When we were pulled back inside, 5 fewer than we had started, the overseer nodded once. Acceptable loss rate. Back in the racks, no one spoke. Silence is safer than grief. Children grow up hearing lullabies of suffering. The sounds of the prison ship become language before words do. The hiss of pressure doors, the clatter of chains, the distant rhythmic chanting of tech priests conducting rites we were never meant to understand. I learned to tell what kind of pain was happening nearby, just by the pitch of the screams. High and short meant shock batons. Long and wet meant flensing tools. When screams cut off abruptly, you did not ask why. Some prisoners try to organize. They talk about resistance, about taking control of a section, about bargaining for better conditions. They always speak quietly, hunched together like conspirators in a myth. They are always wrong. The ship was designed for mutiny, the way a coffin is designed for comfort. Every corridor has kill zones. Every bulkhead can become a weapon. When the last uprising happened, before my birth, the official report said it lasted 19 seconds. Afterward, they vented 3 decks to make sure the lesson carried. You don't hate the enforcers. Hate requires energy. You fear them in the way prey fears weather. They arrive, they pass, they destroy what is in their path. Sometimes they pause and look at you, helmet lenses dark, unreadable. I once made eye contact with one through the slit of his visor. I saw nothing. That terrified me more than anger ever could. The crew lives separately from us, sealed behind layers of sanctified steel and ritual purity. To them, we are contamination, necessary but distasteful. They wear rebreathers when passing through our sections, as if our very breath might infect them. Once, during a transfer, I saw a junior officer retch after a prisoner brushed against him. The enforcer beside him broke the prisoner's neck without slowing their stride. Cleanliness was restored. Warp travel is the worst. The ship groans differently then, metal flexing under stresses that should not exist. The lights dim to a sickly violet. People pray, scream, laugh, claw at their own faces. The whispers grow louder. I have felt something press against my thoughts during translation, something vast and amused, like a predator sniffing prey through glass. The Gellerfield holds, it always holds. If it ever fails, none of this will matter anymore. I have seen men go mad in the warp, eyes bleeding, mouths moving around words no one taught them. They are taken away. We never see them again. Sometimes, days later, you hear chanting from servitor bays that uses voices you recognize. That is when you stop listening. There are women aboard who give birth in chains. The infants are evaluated within minutes. Strong ones are marked for labor futures. Weak ones are disposed of quietly. Mercy is inefficient. My mother survived 3 years after giving birth to me. She died of an infection from a restraint collar that rubbed her neck raw. No one noticed until the smell changed. I did not cry. Crying wastes water. As years passed, my body hardened into something shaped by necessity. Hands, scarred. Lungs adapted to thin air. Spine permanently curved from low ceilings. I learned which pipes carried heat and which carried poison. I learned how to sleep in shifts measured in minutes. I learned how to look invisible. Sometimes the ship picks up new prisoners, fresh ones. You can tell by their eyes. They still look around. They still ask questions. They still think this is temporary. We watch them the way old men watch storms roll in, with resignation. Within weeks, the light fades. Within months, they stop asking. Within years, they are indistinguishable from the rest of us. Once, a preacher was brought aboard, a real one. He shouted sermons until his voice gave out, promising salvation, forgiveness, a purpose in suffering. The enforcers let him speak for 3 days. On the 4th, they crucified him in the central corridor and left him there until he stopped breathing. Faith is allowed, organization is not. If you ask what life is like inside an Imperial prison ship, understand this, it is not constant agony. That would break you too quickly. It is controlled deprivation, carefully measured despair, suffering rationed so you last as long as possible. The Imperium does not waste resources, even human ones. I am still prisoner 889 Theta Delta. I am older now. I do not know how old. Time slipped away somewhere between executions and warp jumps. I have outlived men stronger than me, and children younger than me. That does not mean I am special. It means I have not yet been required to die. The ship hums around me as I speak, a familiar vibration through steel and bone. Air recyclers grind. Chains rattle. Somewhere, a number is being read aloud, and someone's life is ending or changing forever. Mine continues, for now. inside a vessel that will never care whether I breathe or not, so long as it keeps moving. And that is what life is like inside an Imperial prison ship. You endure until you don't. Endurance becomes instinct long before it becomes a choice. There comes a point when you stop remembering how you arrived here, not because the memory fades, but because it stops mattering. Guilt, innocence, crime, sentence, those are concepts for worlds with skies and judges who breathe fresh air. Aboard the Lex Talionis, the only verdict that matters is whether your body still functions. If it does, you are kept. If it does not, you are repurposed. I learned that word later, repurposed. It sounds clean, efficient. It means your corpse will still serve the Emperor long after your mind is gone. There are levels of the ship we are never meant to see, but sometimes fate misfiles a number. Sometimes a transport route overlaps with a labor detail. That is how I first saw the processing decks. Endless rows of restraint frames. Surgical arms hanging from ceilings like metallic spiders. Tech priests murmuring Benharic prayers, their voices layered with static and devotion. Bodies moved along tracks, stripped, measured, tagged. Some screamed, some were already silent. The priests did not distinguish between the two. One of them looked at me once, or at least, the lenses where his eyes used to be turned in my direction. I felt exposed, catalogued, reduced to data points and probabilities. He tilted his head, as if listening to something I could not hear, then dismissed me with a gesture. Unworthy of modification. For now, I have seen what happens to those chosen. Servitors are mercy compared to other outcomes. Penal legions, live fire test subjects, psychic dampening experiments that leave nothing behind but screaming flesh and melted synapses. There are rumors of worse things, whispered late in ration cycles, when fear loosens tongues. Of prisoners fed to things kept in sealed holds. Of living cargo meant to placate allies the Imperium pretends it does not have. Rumors do not need to be true to be effective.
Every so often, the ship takes damage. A lucky shot from a rebel cruiser. Debris from a dying station. The alarms sound, and sections seal without warning. People trapped on the wrong side beat on bulkheads until their hands break. The air thins. The temperature drops. When the doors finally reopen, enforcers drag out the bodies and note the losses. Repairs are logged. Life support recalibrated. The ship continues. Once, I was on the wrong side. We were working conduit maintenance when the klaxons howled. Bulkhead slammed shut faster than fear could travel. 10 of us were sealed into a maintenance junction, no bigger than a cargo container. Emergency air kicked in, thin and cold. We waited. Minutes stretched into hours. People started talking, then praying, then fighting. One man tried to conserve oxygen by strangling another. They both died, faster that way. When the doors finally opened, only 3 of us were still breathing. An enforcer looked at us, nodded, and ordered us back to work. Survivability confirmed. You stop asking why after that. There are moments, rare and dangerous, when you almost forget where you are. When exhaustion blurs the edges of fear, and routine settles in like anesthesia. You laugh at something stupid. You share a story about a world you barely remember. Those moments are traps. The ship corrects them quickly. A beating, an execution, a reminder. I remember a boy named Cars. He was born 2 cycles after me, small and sharp-eyed, too curious. Curiosity gets noticed. He used to ask me what planets were like. I lied. I told him they were loud, crowded, full of moles. I wanted to protect him from imagining skies. One day, his number was called for Psychona screening. He smiled at me as they took him, proud to be chosen. I never saw him again. Weeks later, during warp transit, I heard a child's voice screaming inside my head, begging for help in a language that burned. I do not know if it was him. I do not want to know. The ship ages. So do we. Metal corrodes. Flesh weakens. The difference is that metal gets replaced. Flesh gets cold. I have seen old prisoners who have been aboard longer than most crew. Bent shapes clinging to rails, eyes clouded, memories worn smooth. They know every sound the ship makes. They can tell what kind of failure is happening by vibration alone. They are valuable, until they aren't. When they finally collapse, their bodies are taken apart,
with a reverence we never received alive.
Sometimes, the ship docks, rarely. The sensation is strange, a lurch and a shudder as mass meets mass. New air floods in, fresher, sharper. New screams echo through the corridors. Prisoners are unloaded like freight. Others are loaded to replace them. The exchange is seamless. No one ever asks where those taken are going. No one ever asks where the newcomers came from. Questions imply alternatives. I once saw sunlight through a viewport during docking. Just a sliver, filtered through layers of shielding. It hurt to look at. My eyes watered. The light felt wrong, intrusive, like something sacred glimpsed without permission. An enforcer noticed and struck me for lingering. I thanked him. Some things are not meant to be remembered. You learn to measure time by loss, by the faces that disappear, by the spaces that remain empty for a while before being filled again. You learn not to form attachments. You learn not to hope for release. Release exists. It is called death. Everything else is extension. If you are looking for meaning inside an Imperial prison ship, you will not find it written anywhere official. There are no lessons here, no redemption arcs. There is only function. We exist because the Imperium requires us to exist. When that requirement ends, so do we. I am still here, still breathing recycled air, still listening to the hum of machinery that has replaced my heartbeat. I do not know how my story ends. I know only that it will end aboard this ship or because of it. And until that moment arrives, I will continue to endure, because endurance is the only rebellion left in me. The Lex Talionis moves on through the void, carrying its forgotten souls between wars that will never end. And I move with it, another number in its holds, alive not because I am valued, but because I have not yet been spent. Spending is inevitable. You feel it coming long before it happens. There is a particular kind of silence that settles over a section when a purge is scheduled. The announcements stop. The patrols increase. Servitors line the corridors, motionless, like statues carved from meat and metal. We smell the chemicals before we are told anything. Sharp, antiseptic, meant to kill without leaving residue. Someone always whispers first, not loudly. Loud gets you killed. Just enough for the idea to spread. Reclassification, load reduction, efficiency correction. That is how the Imperium says it has decided there are too many of us. The first purge I survived happened during a resource shortfall. Warp storms had delayed resupply, and the ship's consumption projections no longer aligned with reality. The solution was simple. Reduce consumption. They sealed entire decks and flooded them with suppressant gas. Painless, the official report would say. Necessary. I was spared because my number was flagged as skilled. I listened through the bulkhead as the section next to mine went quiet, the screams fading into coughing. Then nothing at all. When the doors reopened days later, servitors removed the bodies with hooks, stacking them like cordwood. The smell lingered for weeks. You stop thinking of survival as winning. It is just postponement. There are moments when the ship almost feels intentional, as if it knows exactly how much pressure to apply to keep us functional without breaking us completely. Too much cruelty causes rebellion. Too little causes complacency. The balance is perfect. Generations of suffering refined into doctrine. This is not cruelty born of malice. This is cruelty born of bureaucracy, and that is far worse. I have heard officers talk once, when they thought no prisoners were close enough to understand. They discussed us the way one discusses ammunition stockpiles, attrition rates, storage efficiency, optimal lifespan under current conditions. One of them laughed about a transport that arrived with too many survivors. They didn't work them hard enough, he said. I wondered if he ever dreamed of us. I decided he did not. Sometimes prisoners are taken not to die, but to be displayed. Examples: a man who attacked an enforcer, a woman who sabotaged a dispenser. They are restrained in central corridors, left alive but broken, their punishment broadcast to every section. We are forced to walk past them during ration cycles, eyes forward, hands behind backs. Looking too long is considered sympathy. Sympathy is considered sedition. I remember one woman who would not scream,
No matter what they did, she stayed silent, staring straight ahead, lips moving in what might have been prayer or might have been counting. The enforcers grew irritated. Silence denies them feedback. Eventually, they killed her just to end it. I remember her more clearly than anyone else I have lost. Children still play here, in their way. Games of guessing which light will flicker next, of timing patrol routes, of pretending the ship is something else. A city, a beast, a god. Those games end early. Childhood does not last long when the walls listen. As I grew older, they moved me to oversight labor, teaching new prisoners how to survive, just enough to be useful. I showed them how to brace during pressure changes, how to drink condensation without getting sick, how to hide injuries so they would not be flagged as waste. Some thanked me, most forgot me, a few resented me, all of them suffered anyway. I sometimes wonder if the Emperor knows about ships like this. If he approves, then I remember that approval is irrelevant. The Imperium functions not because anyone cares, but because caring was optimized out centuries ago. During one warp jump, the Geller field faltered. Not enough to fail, enough to leak. Shadows peeled away from corners and stretched too long. Voices whispered promises, threats, truths that felt like lies wrapped around desires I did not know I had. People tore at themselves. Enforcers fired blindly. When it ended, hundreds were gone. Some disappeared entirely. No bodies, no blood, just empty spaces where people had been. The official report listed them as lost to transit anomaly. I call it mercy, in a way. I am tired now. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, the kind that settles into bones and stays. I feel the ship's vibrations less clearly. My hands shake sometimes. That will be noticed. When productivity drops, usefulness follows. When usefulness ends, so do I. I am not afraid of death. I am afraid of being repurposed. Afraid that whatever is left of me will keep working long after I am gone. A mouth screaming silently behind a metal mask. Eyes replaced with lenses that will never close. If this is a confession, then this is it. I have learned to love nothing. Not because I am cruel, but because love is leverage. The ship takes whatever you give it. Names, memories, hope. I have kept only one thing from it. My awareness of what this place truly is. Life inside an Imperial prison ship is not about punishment. It is about demonstrating a truth the Imperium never states aloud. That humanity is abundant, expendable, and endlessly replaceable. We are proof of concept, floating through the void.
The Lex Talionis continues on its route, engines burning, holds full, ledgers balanced. And somewhere inside it, I am still breathing, still counting cycles, still waiting for the moment my number is finally read for the last time. When that happens, the ship will not slow down. It never does. Waiting becomes a kind of background radiation. You don't notice it until it eats through you. There are fewer of us now who remember earlier cycles. Faces thin out. Voices disappear. The ship does not replace them as quickly as it once did. That tells me something. Either the Imperium has found more efficient ways to spend lives elsewhere, or something ahead will require a great many of us at once. Both possibilities feel heavy in the air, like pressure before a hull breach. The Lex Talionis has moods. That sounds foolish, but live here long enough and you feel them. Periods of relentless labor, followed by long stretches of uneasy calm. During the calm, the enforcers watch us more closely. Calm is when people think. Thinking is dangerous. I once asked an old man how long he had been aboard. He laughed, a dry sound that scraped his throat raw. He said he had arrived before the last refit, before the hull scars we walked over every day. That meant decades, maybe more. He said the ship used to have windows prisoners could look through, once. They sealed them after too many people stopped working. Hope leaks, he told me. They learned that. He died 3 cycles later during a routine inspection. Heart failure. His body was taken to the reclamation decks. His number was reassigned within the week. Dreams still come, though I wish they wouldn't. Not of freedom. Never that. I dream of corridors that do not end, of doors that open onto smaller rooms,
of air that gets thinner the more I breathe. Sometimes I dream I am the ship, endless and hollow, moving forward because stopping has been forbidden for so long it no longer feels possible. I wake up choking, heart racing, and the hum of the engines tells me nothing has changed. There are whispers now of a major transfer, a destination spoken only in fragments, a siege world, a meat grinder. Somewhere the Imperium needs bodies that already know how to endure pain and follow orders without believing in anything. Prison ships are perfect for that. We will be issued uniforms, weapons we are not expected to keep long, redemption through expenditure. Some prisoners are excited. They hide it poorly. Anything is better than this, they think. Anything that involves open space and enemies you can see. I do not share their excitement. I have learned that the Imperium does not offer alternatives, only variations. I have seen men marched off ships like this before, pressed into penal battalions. I have seen the footage later, recycled through propaganda screens meant for crew morale. Grainy images of charges across mud and wire, explosions, screaming. A narrator speaking of courage and duty. No mention of what happens to those who survive the first assault. No mention of the shot callers. No mention of the officers standing behind them with bolt pistols, ready to enforce bravery. If that is my end, then it is still an end. Part of me welcomes that.
The air recyclers are louder now, straining. The paste dispensers clog more often. Maintenance requests go unanswered longer. These are signs. Everything breaks eventually, even machines designed to last forever. When this ship finally dies, it will not be dramatic. It will be logged, replaced, forgotten. The Imperium does not mourn infrastructure. I think sometimes about the world this ship orbits when it does orbit. The one I was never meant to touch. I imagine oceans I have never smelled, wind I have never felt. Then I stop. Imagination wastes energy. If anyone ever hears this, if these words survive somehow, understand that this is not a plea. It is not a warning. It is simply an accounting. This is what it means to live inside an Imperial prison ship. To be born already condemned, to be kept alive only because it is useful, to move endlessly through the void without destination or purpose beyond consumption. My breathing is shallow now. That will be noticed. The scanners will flag me. A decision will be made somewhere far above my head, by someone who has never seen my face and never will. When that decision reaches me, it will arrive in the form of boots on steel and chains around my wrists. Until then, I remain here, pressed into the ribs of a ship that does not know my name, listening to its endless, grinding heartbeat, enduring because endurance is all that was ever asked of me. And when I am finally spent, the Lex Talionis will carry on, full of new numbers, new bodies, new lives measured not in years or dreams, but in how long they can keep the machine moving through the dark. That is life inside an Imperial prison ship. Nothing more, nothing less. Nothing ever truly ends here. It only thins, stretches, fades into something quieter and harder to notice. After the announcement came, the one they did not bother translating into Low Gothic, the ship changed, not in ways you could point to on a schematic, but in the way a body changes when it knows it is dying. Power was rerouted. Entire lumen strips went dark and never came back. Patrol routes tightened. The servitors were reprogrammed with a new urgency in their movements, as if the ship itself was impatient. They began sorting us. You could tell by the way they looked at you. Longer scans, additional checks, Auspex wands lingering over chests and skulls. They were building lists again. Lists always precede violence. My number stayed uncalled, cycle after cycle, and that frightened me more than selection ever had. It meant I was being held in reserve. I watched others go. Some walked with heads high, pretending this was a transfer to something better. Some wept openly. Some had to be dragged, feet scraping sparks from the deck. The enforcers did not care which kind you were. The chains sounded the same. Those left behind grew quieter. Conversations shrank to glances. Even the children stopped playing their small, desperate games. Everyone was listening now, attuned to the ship in a way that bordered on reverence. We felt it preparing, aligning itself with some distant purpose we would never be told. One cycle,
I was assigned to escort detail. That alone told me I was nearing the end of my usefulness.
Escorts are witnesses.
Witnesses are liabilities. They marched us through sections I had only ever heard about. The armament holds, the launch bays, cavernous spaces where gravity felt optional, and the void pressed close on the other side of armored shutters. I saw rows of drop capsules, scarred and pitted, stacked like bullets, waiting for a chamber. I understood then. This ship was not just a prison. It was a magazine.
We passed a chapel used only by the crew. Candles burned there, real ones, their smoke curling up into ventilation grates. I had not smelled unfiltered flame in my entire life. For a moment, the scent almost broke me. An enforcer shoved me forward, and the moment passed. They brought us to a holding deck already full. Thousands packed tighter than we ever were in the racks, standing shoulder to shoulder, shock collars locked, numbers glowing faintly at the base of our skulls. The air was hot, thick with fear sweat and ozone. Somewhere above us, officers gave orders. Somewhere far away, a war waited. I did not resist when my collar was fitted. Resistance is another word for delay. As we stood there, waiting for whatever came next, I realized something that surprised me with its clarity. I was not angry. I was not even afraid. I felt hollow, like a container that had finally been emptied of its last illusion. The ship had taken everything it could from me. What remained was enough. If I die planetside, torn apart by artillery, or burned by weapons I will never understand, then at least I will have felt something new. Wind, maybe? Open space? The sky, even if only for a second before it falls on me in fire. That thought settles in me like a strange, guilty comfort. The klaxons sound now, different from any I have heard before. Deeper. Final. The deck vibrates as mechanisms the size of city blocks come online. We are being loaded. I speak this now not because I believe it will change anything, but because I am still capable of forming words, and soon I may not be. This is the sum of it. This is what life was like inside an Imperial prison ship. Not a story of redemption or justice, a story of processing, endurance, and eventual expenditure. The chains tighten. The line moves forward. Ahead of me, a launch capsule yawns open like a mouth. If this is the last thing I ever know, then let it be known clearly. I was here. I endured. I was used. And the machine never even noticed when I was gone. The capsule seals around us with a sound like a tomb closing. The interior is cramped, barely enough room to breathe, metal pressing against my shoulders, my knees drawn tight to my chest. The shock collar hums softly now, synced with the launch systems, a reminder that even here, even at the edge of whatever comes next, I am still owned. The air smells different, fresher, untainted by decades of recycled despair. It almost hurts to inhale it. The countdown begins somewhere outside. I cannot hear the numbers, but I feel them in the way the capsule trembles, in the way my heart tries to outrun what is coming. For the first time in my life, there are no walls stretching endlessly around me, no corridors, no bulkheads, just this moment, suspended between the prison that shaped me and the war that will erase me. I think of my mother, though her face is blurred into something symbolic rather than real. I think of the boy who asked about planets. I think of the woman who would not scream. I think of all the numbers that were erased before mine, all the breaths recycled into nothing. The ship releases us. The sensation is violent, absolute. Acceleration crushes thought flat. Gravity becomes a weapon, pinning me into the capsule's curve as the Lex Talionis hurls us toward a world that has never known my name and never will. Somewhere above, the ship turns away already, engines flaring, its duty complete. We are no longer cargo. We are ammunition in flight. Atmosphere ignites around the capsule. Heat screams across the hull. The capsule shakes, howls, fights to remain intact. Warning runes flash red across the interior. I smell burning metal. I smell my own fear. And through it all, something unexpected happens. I feel alive. Not useful, not counted, alive. For a handful of seconds, I exist outside the ship's accounting.
outside its ledgers and quotas and cold decisions. I am not enduring. I am not waiting. I am simply falling. Impact comes without ceremony. The capsule slams into the ground hard enough to turn the world white. Pain explodes through me, sharp and total, but I am still conscious. The restraints release. The hatch blows outward. Smoke and fire pour in, and with them something I have never truly experienced before: wind. It rushes over my skin, carrying ash and the distant thunder of artillery. The sky above is not blue. It is choked with smoke and burning aircraft and falling debris. But it is a sky. Open, vast, uncontained. I stagger out onto the surface of the world. The ground is mud and blood and shattered metal. Bodies already lie scattered around the landing zone, some moving, most not. Officers shout orders. Shock collars detonate on those who hesitate. Weapons are shoved into our hands, crude and heavy and unfamiliar. Ahead of us, the enemy waits, unseen, but close enough that the air vibrates with its presence. I stand there for a moment longer than I am allowed. I look up, not because it matters, not because it will save me, but because I can. I was born inside a machine that decided I did not matter. I lived inside its ribs, breathing its leftovers, shaped by its indifference. And now, at the end, I stand beneath an open sky, about to die for reasons I was never told. That feels like enough. The whistle blows, the collars surge. My body moves forward with the others, into fire, into noise, into an ending the ship no longer needs to record. If I die here, the Lex Talionis will continue on without me, its holds filling with new numbers, its engines humming the same indifferent song. But for these final seconds, as I run across alien soil beneath a burning sky, I am no longer inside the prison. And that is the closest thing to freedom I will ever know. The charge does not last long. Nothing does. The first shells land ahead of us, throwing bodies into the air like scraps of paper. Men vanish mid-stride, reduced to mist and fragments. The ground bucks and splits. Someone beside me screams my number instead of my name, as if that will make the Emperor notice. The sound is cut off by shrapnel. We keep moving because the collars tell us to, because stopping hurts more than running forward. I fire the weapon when my hands decide to. I do not know if I hit anything. The recoil bruises my shoulder. The noise is overwhelming. Guns, engines, voices layered into a single roar that drowns thought. This is not war as the pit feeds show it. There is no rhythm, no glory. Just chaos and impact and the smell of burned meat. I trip over a body and fall into the mud. For a moment, the collar hums, warning me to rise. Then something explodes close enough that the warning puts out mid-pulse. My ears ring. The world tilts. I lie there, face pressed into cold, wet soil that does not belong to a ship. The mud tastes real, heavy, final. Above me, boots run past. Some stop, some don't. Orders are shouted. Someone is dragged away. Someone else is executed for hesitating. The battle rolls on without noticing me, just as the prison ship always did. I try to move my legs. They do not respond. There is warmth spreading beneath me, soaking into the ground. I realize distantly that the collar is dark, no glow, no hum. Either it is broken or I am no longer worth correcting. The sky flickers as explosions tear through smoke clouds. For the first time, I can see depth in it. Distance. Endless, terrifying space that is not made of steel. It feels too large, like something humans were never meant to have. I think of the Lex Talionis then, already turning away from this world. Its holds emptying, its ledgers balancing. Somewhere inside it, new prisoners are being bored, learning the sound of air recyclers, learning how to endure. My absence will be a rounding error. My breathing grows shallow. That would have been flagged aboard the ship, a problem to be solved. Here it is simply happening. If there is an emperor watching, he does not intervene. If there are gods in the warp, they keep their distance. I am alone in the open for the first and last time. The noise fades, not because the battle ends, but because my body stops paying attention to it. Sensation narrows. Cold seeps in. The sky blurs. I do not feel regret. Regret implies alternative paths. I had none. I was born in chains, lived as inventory, and died as expenditure. That is the shape of my life. Clean and complete. No redemption, no lesson. Just a record that will never be read. My last breath leaves me in a place without walls. And somewhere far above, an Imperial prison ship moves on through the dark, already forgetting I ever existed.